The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, was established by an act of the United States Congress in 1934. It was the first federal regulator of the securities markets. The SEC is responsible for monitoring corporate mergers and acquisitions, protecting investors from unethical trading practices and enforcing federal securities laws. The vast majority of new issues of securities that are offered in interstate commerce, through the mail, or on the internet are required to be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Registration with the SEC is obligatory for companies in the financial industry that offer services such as broker dealing, advisory, and asset management. The United States Congress ratified both the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, which led to the establishment of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in the end. These two pieces of legislation are collectively referred to as the Securities Act, SEC. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, was given the responsibility of ensuring that companies disclosed correct information regarding their operations and that investors were treated fairly and honestly. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, files a significant number of civil enforcement actions against companies and individuals who violate laws related to the securities industry. These laws can be broken in a variety of ways. Some of the most common violations that the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, investigates and prosecutes include insider trading, fraudulent accounting, and the dissemination of information that is either deceptive or completely false. The Securities and Exchange Commission is in charge of the prosecution of these offenses. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, filed charges against 204 distinct individuals or organizations and obtained close to $4 billion in fines, disgorgement, and other forms of monetary relief. For example, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, issued an order that demanded Goldman Sachs pay a penalty of $550 million. This was the largest fine that had ever been imposed on a company based on Wall Street, and it was also the second largest fine in the entire history of the SEC. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has come under fire for failing to protect Wall Street brokers and senior managers who were involved in the financial crisis as adequately as they could have. The vast majority of these people, if not all of them, were cleared of any serious wrongdoing by any of the investigations that were conducted into the matter. Even though the SEC did make an adequate number of efforts to assist in the prosecution of those who were involved, this result was still achieved. As of right now, only one executive from Wall Street has been found guilty and given a prison sentence for their involvement in the scandal. The Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC, is an agency of the federal government that is in charge of establishing rules and regulations. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, is the regulatory body that issues licenses to individuals working in the securities industry and supervises broker-dealers. FINRA is also responsible for monitoring and regulating the securities industry. Formerly known as the National Association of Securities Dealers, NASD, FINRA changed its name in 1998. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, begins the process of developing a new regulation by first publishing a concept release. This is then followed by the submission of a proposal for consideration. The Securities and Exchange Commission is going to hold a meeting to discuss the comments and suggestions that have been made by members of the general public. A vote is held to determine whether or not to move forward with the implementation. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, is an independent federal agency that is overseen by a 5-person commission consisting of a chairman and 4 other commissioners. The chairman of the commission serves as the SEC's chief executive officer. The person who holds the role of a chief executive officer at the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, is known as the chairman of the commission. It is required by several federal laws, including the Securities Act of 1933, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, for the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to provide an explanation to Congress regarding its actions. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, is in charge of overseeing and policing the nation's various financial exchanges and markets. The Securities and Exchange Commission's primary duty is to maintain a vigilant watch over the activities of businesses and individuals who are involved in the securities markets. The company provides investors with access to registration statements, periodic financial reports, and other security forms by making use of an electronic system known as the Electronic Data Gathering and Analysis Router, EDGAR. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, was established in 1934 as a direct response to the catastrophic crash of the stock market that took place in 1929. This action was taken as a direct reaction to what had occurred. This action was taken because the primary motivation behind it was to facilitate the process of regaining the confidence of investors. As a result, this action was carried out to assist in the process of regaining the investors' confidence. The President of the United States chooses one of the 5 other commissioners who serve on the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to fill the position of chairman of the SEC. Each commissioner serves a 5-year term in office. However, if a replacement cannot be found within that time frame, the commissioners may each continue to serve for an additional 18 months if necessary. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, is currently being led by Gary Gensler, who also holds the position of chair of the SEC. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, is made up of a total of 24 locations, including 23 offices that are spread out across 5 different divisions. These offices are part of the SEC's overall structure. Their objectives include, among other things, the formulation of brand new regulations and the supervision of financial institutions that already exist. The interpretation of the laws that govern security and the taking of enforcement actions related to those laws are 2 additional goals that are included in this mission statement. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, can only file civil actions, and those filings have to be done in front of either a federal judge or an administrative judge. The SEC can only file civil actions. The Securities and Exchange Commission is not authorized to file criminal cases, rather, it is the responsibility of the Department of Justice to handle such cases. Even though the SEC frequently collaborates closely with various law enforcement agencies to provide evidence and assist with court proceedings, this is still the case. Injunctions are court orders that are handed down when it is essential to stop future violations from occurring. If a person or company disobeys an injunction, they put themselves in danger of receiving a monetary fine or even time spent in jail, depending on the severity of the infraction. The SEC has the authority to petition the court for an order that prohibits or suspends individuals from serving in the capacities of corporate officers or directors. In other words, the SEC can remove individuals from their positions. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC, is the organization that acts as the initial level of appeal for actions sought by self-regulatory organizations within the securities industry. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act of 2010 was responsible for the creation of the Securities and Exchange Commission's, SEC, whistleblower program. The program rewards individuals with monetary sanctions of over $1 million for providing original information that leads to successful law enforcement actions. This office was established to protect individuals who come forward with information about possible violations of securities laws. The Securities and Exchange Commission is a government agency that operates within the United States. It is accountable for keeping an eye on and regulating the securities markets. These pieces of legislation were primarily enacted as a reaction to a situation that had previously taken place. This was one of the most significant contributing factors that led up to the beginning of the Great Depression.